here with the Johnny Cash t-shirt from Walmart on the 22nd. Uh, and I wanted to quickly, one thing I wanted to mention as I wrap up all my commentary with the 2019 Iditarod, one of the things I thought was interesting is, and I was reflecting, the last time I went through going to some of the gyms, how like the public infrastructure, like the YMCA, it was falling apart. It wasn't as good as some of the private sector options, like a Planet Fitness or an Anytime Fitness, etc. And even like in another town, I went to a Gold's Gym, and it was almost like a YMCA where you seem to have the wrong clientele, and things were sort of falling apart in terms of the clients, just in terms of all the details that go into that type of business. And I thought it was apt comment to make that it was similar to my observations with what was happening in terms of the media and the storytelling along the 2019 Iditarod. I think some of the public infrastructure, like, and maybe it's not public infrastructure, but in terms of the reporting, like the Anchorage Daily News or Alaska Public Radio, or even the Iditarod Insider, I felt like they were not, the Kale Casey thing. I think some of my videos, I think the Kaiser website, I think some of that stuff was actually effectively overtaking them in terms of reaching an audience, in terms of engaging an audience. It's sad that the Anchorage Daily News and the Insider are just only doing things with people who pay, and I think that that's sort of an interesting moment where the actual race organization and the local news, etc., are basically becoming obsolete compared to the private sector options that are better and more articulate in delivering free content and better content to a broader audience in a faster, in a more timely way, and in a more and just being more engaging. Like, someone tweeted me, I responded with a 10-minute audio video. You know what I mean? And someone mentioned to Kale Casey online, what about what's going on with this musher? And Kale went and did a live video update with them that was free to the public. So and just generally speaking, I think that you're going to see more of that too. I think moving forward, not just a couple people, but I think not just for the Iditarod either. I think generally speaking, in terms of the public relations industries, in terms of the communication industries, in terms of media and what happens on the internet versus the old people working at a newspaper or whatever, getting paid to do it, and almost more just doing PR and complaining about not having internet access and all this stuff. You're going to see all across the board, in all communities and all different wavelengths. You're going to see that stuff overtake it. But I also think it's interesting how there was so much engagement with the Blair Braverman on Twitter, but then there was just absolutely nothing on like Instagram and nothing on Facebook, and that really showed to me the shallowness and the lack of penetration of an actual market there. Like if Blair was Kale, even though there was a bunch of stuff that got donated, I still shake my head. I feel like it's just a couple big donors. If Blair was Kale and she was actually trying to sell stuff, you want, Facebook is a better platform, a real platform. It's because on Twitter, there's just too much of this stuff is just fake, so and that's sort of like the Anchorage Daily News too. It's just like, is it really, does it really, and also the Iditarod Insider, does it really, some questions for those guys. I think they have to look hard at their chalkboard and stuff. Does it really make sense for the 2 weeks during the race to try to privatize that data in terms of, reporting on a sporting event and not make it free to the public? You know what I mean? I think that they would. I think Iditarod Trail Committee, and when they do the Iditarod Insider, it should be free to the public. And then afterwards, when they make that film about the race, they can sell it. I said that from the beginning. I've said it a million times. They don't care, but obviously their race is falling apart too. It has numerous public relations disasters, and they are all very valid too. It's a corrupt group of people, and there are multiple felons in terms of the Iditarod mushers. They're involved in human trafficking, labor trafficking, and many other crimes. And the race organization is a nonprofit, but those Iditarod kennels are not nonprofits. So and they do debt bondage and have people basically go there and be a slave, etc. So it's one of those things where they're going to really just continue to struggle, I think, in terms of that nonprofit organization. And in terms of those Iditarod mushers, they're just going to continue to struggle to try to keep their head above water, because the truth of how they do business illegally is just coming to the surface the more people are able to just sort of speak directly and look at the camera like I am right now. But I think it goes for the Anchorage Daily News too. You've got an opportunity to reach a a global audience, and instead of doing that, engage a global audience. And when they go and they read your for free your Iditarod coverage, they'll begin looking at some of your other coverage, and then maybe in the future they will become a member or whatever your thing to read your news articles. But when you make it so that people can't read the news articles and you're covering the race, you're just really selling yourself short and cheating yourself, because it just shows that you don't have the content. That on content alone you can win the immediate battle, and you just can't tell the story like some of these other people can tell the story. So I just think that those were some observations in terms of the public relations, in terms of the communication industry, in terms of the news industry, in terms of the media, and in terms of how that more of that guerrilla grassroots, just people picking up a camera and doing it themselves is slowly and steadily but clearly overtaking the sort of the established entrenched in things like Anchorage Daily News and like the News Miner, in terms of their ability to actually relate what's going on. I think some of that's good, because a lot of that stuff in the news, like we've seen time and time again, is just basically public relations, and it's just PR, and it's just bullshit, and it's all fake. And when you go out there, you just get a camera, people can look at the camera, you can talk about the issues. That's where you see the real stuff. And that's sort of the danger, honestly, with the Blair stuff too, is that when you're just sticking on Twitter and you can't look at the camera and be on video, and you're buying Twitter followers, that gets into that same realm of just that fake stuff versus the real stuff. And again, I think the impression, looking at it again, I shake my head, and I'm happy I'm not involved in it directly, and I'm happy I've walked away from it, because it's too much about economics, and it's too much about not just economics, but about politics and economics, and it's very much also just the entire construct of it is built on the series of businesses that are doing things that are not just potentially negative towards animals, but potentially negative towards people and the labor who work at the kennels time and time again. And you know it's just it's a thing that I think there will be constructive changes that will happen, shortly, with that community, whether it's through law enforcement or whether it's through internal, efforts to try to do better. But anyway,